Good afternoon, Ken Bytel.
Hi, Ken. This is AmyFord. Thank you for letting me call you back. I appreciate that.
Oh, no problem at all, Amy.
Great. Well, yeah, I had just been poking around and gotten a few emails on some of the concerns that you guys had about the what was happening with I-70 and the like, and I thought, oh, you know what, let me just give you a call and see if there's some questions that I can answer, because the way some of it was written a little bit, I thought, oh, you know what, there might be misunderstanding a little bit about what's going on up in the mountains and through town, and I thought I'd see if I could answer any questions for you guys.
Oh, great. That sounds really good. Yeah, I think it'll be really helpful to discuss and exchange information, and we have a range of concerns, and so I think it'll just be wonderful to have the dialogue and then, just be able to clarify anything that's not clear right now. So appreciate the call.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I guess the biggest thing, and, I can sort of share a few things, and feel free to just ask questions as we go along, is that
Sure.
there are challenges, as you well know, in regards to our funding and, improvements that we may or may not be able to make to the state highway transportation system as we try to continue to accommodate for all the things that are happening here in Colorado. And so the US 36 corridor, as you know, is certainly one of those where we have been able to move forward with a really unique multimodal project that supports both the new bus rapid transit system that is going to be going up to Boulder, along with a bike and ped lane, and then it does so by adding one lane in each direction there on US 36 that is going to be a tolled express lane. And so that's the lane, obviously, that you guys are referencing. And that tolled express lane, as you indicated, you were definitely accurate. It's one lane that would be the tolled express lane that keeps the other lanes that are on the corridor as a general purpose. So which means free for anyone to use, and that won't ever change. And then, you can use that lane either by riding the bus, or you can pay a toll to use the lane, or you can use it for free as an HOV rider. Right now, that's an HOV rider that includes one passenger, so we call that HOV2. By 2017, system-wide, so this is all of the express lanes within the CDOT system, we're going to be shifting to an HOV3 usage. And there's a couple of reasons that we're doing that. Number one is, to continue to encourage carpooling, which we think is really an important way of sort of mitigating congestion, that kind of thing. But also, two, because the amount of HOV2 users who are currently using those lanes, like those on I-25 and that kind of thing, are congesting the lane to the point where it's no longer a very reliable lane of travel, especially for our buses. And so we want to make sure that we can balance the use of that lane. And one of the ways, there are two ways you can do that, sort of by continuing to adjust your toll pricing for, using basically congestion pricing to manage the lane. And then the other way to do it is also by looking at it to use the lane for free. And so that's one of the changes that you'll see probably no later than 2017, both with the US 36 corridor and then with the I-25 corridor next year. So that's sort of what's going on with US 36.
Great. Yeah, just a couple of questions on 36 prior to moving on towards I-70 discussion. So my understanding, and can you tell me, is this correct, is that all three lanes of Highway 36 are under management and operation of the plenary group. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, what we did is a couple of things. Number one is we decided to see if we could get a public-private partner to support us in the construction of Phase 2 of the US 36 project. So we were able to fund the project through Phase 1, which basically took it to about 88th Avenue. And we were able to secure a public-private partnership in our plenary roads. And what that did is it did really two things. Number one, it accelerated the completion of that project and the construction of that project by about 20 years. And it constructs the project by adding basically they pay for about 2/3 of the construction costs of that project, and we pay from our public resources about 1/3. So the financial piece of that was certainly an incentive, as we were looking into this, to say this is something that's worth our while and makes best use of taxpayer dollars to try to get congestion improvements made to an area that we think sorely needs them. So that's sort of the piece of it. So what Plenary gets in return for that is they will get the opportunity to collect tolls both on 36 and on I-25. And they also have they also then manage and operate those tolled express lanes. And then we gave them the opportunity to bid on the maintenance of the general purpose lanes as well. And so they were held to actually a standard level of service that is higher than the one that CDOT currently performs in regards to our snow plowing and things like that. And they were able to do it at a cost that we believe is going to be lower than for us to be able to maintain those same roads. And so we are going to have them maintain both the general purpose and the toll express lanes. And the term of the contract with them right now is 50 years. So what that does is that allows our CDOT employees to go and focus on other roads in the system.
Yeah. Now, a question on that. Has that 50-year contract been signed already?
We're in the process of completing the financial close to that agreement and expect to have the financial close here by about the end of the month or so. So here in a few weeks is the plan.
Okay, that's good to know. And then, let me see. I understand that the contract has not been finalized yet. Are drafts to date of the contract available for public review?
Not before the financial close. Now, there's a lot of financial negotiation still goes in, but we can certainly, that will certainly be available once it's complete.
Yeah, now a question just in terms of timing, and where we're coming from is that we want to help support CDOT and the state legislature in really making sure that the partnership arrangements are indeed in the best interests of Colorado. Really are a good deal for everyone. Is there any kind of review period between finalization of the financials prior towards plenary group being given the opportunity to sign off on it?
No, there's not. And I can double check that with our high performance tolling enterprise folks. It's a good question, but not to my knowledge there is not a public review of the financial close documents.
Okay. Yeah, one of the concepts that we advocate here for both at the Drive Sunshine Institute and Friends of Colorado is healthy amounts of public input so that we can really support the process and kind of assist in public interest. Would there be any mechanism for making a request to have a public review period included in the process?
Gosh, I don't know. Let's see. So let me just sort of explain. So all of this is governed and essentially approved by the High Performance Transportation Enterprise, which is a board that's appointed by the governor that oversees all of any kind of tolling agreements, any kind of operations as it relates to high performance tolling enterprises. So USO 6, perfect example. So that board is certainly one avenue, I think, to address that. And then is the entire enterprise is run by an executive director who the board appoints. And then, from a legislatively perspective, I suspect there's, some approaches there. Senator Jones, obviously, is someone who's keenly interested in all of this as well. So, so that, those would be the two opportunities, I would think, to have that conversation. And so, and I'll have to double check, like I said, and I can certainly get back to you on that. But not to my knowledge, I don't think there's been a public review process at this point in time. But as there commonly isn't, typically in any kind of contract that CDOT or HD or the state agencies do, I've not yet seen an opportunity for public comment on a contract before it's finalized. So it's a fairly unique approach from what I've seen, given other government agencies.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Just it's in a time of innovative finance arrangements, and with is this one of the first major P3s coming out of the HPTE?
It is, yeah. It's our very first, and so we've been really looking a lot at lessons learned, around the country and those kinds of things to make sure that we are protecting the best interests of the state and making sure that our standards of service and the like, and the risks that are assumed are by the private enterprise and not by the state or the taxpayer. And so we've been fortunate, to be able to watch several other states go through this and sort of learn lessons from what they've been doing. But this is our first. It's not the first, however, in the state. The RTD, Regional Transportation District, they entered into their first P3 to construct and maintain the East Corridor line, the rail line that's going to be going out to TIA, and then the Gold Line, which is the line that's going from Denver Union Station up to Arnetta. So they've too sort of entered into similar kinds of agreements. So it's not completely, uncommon here in Colorado, but it's certainly our first. So.
Yeah. Well, and the Drive Sunshine Institute, as a part of our role as a transportation think tank, in looking to support these innovative agreements, one of the concepts that we advocate for is the P4 concept, where there's both the public, private, and then also people component, where we can assist in the review process and really, just in case anything were to be missed, be able to provide input there. So just wanted to mention that. Do you know? Yeah, I think it's just like a good way to really create a win-win for the department and everyone.
Wonderful.
Yeah. One question I have, so are you familiar with some of the non-compete arrangements in the Northwest Parkway contract?
No, I'm not, actually.
Okay, my understanding is that there's language to the effect that municipalities surrounding Northwest Parkway are not able to, there's limits on expanding free roads and just kind of restrictions that way to guarantee financial performance of the toll road there. And I'm wondering if there are any non-compete agreements that you're aware of in the Highway 36 contract to date.
No, and the reason why is because this is a state-owned roadway, so we're granting them the capacity to operate it and collect the tolls, but it is ultimately and always a state-owned roadway. And after the 50 years, it will revert back to us, and should they want to end the contract, the road is always ours. And we can do to it what we want, and so I'm sure there are some things in there, that balance all of this, but there are no quote-unquote guarantees in regards to the tolling, because that is part of the P3, is that it shifts any of the risk related to these, related to the toll collection and the estimates of the revenue that you might generate and that kind of thing because of the tolling, to the private contractors. So it is not, if they underperform, that is their risk, so, or if they overperform, that's, to their benefit. And so, but certainly I think that, I can certainly see why, people would be concerned that any kinds of arrangements that we would want to get into would be constraining, to really meeting the mobility needs of the community. And that's something that we're very conscientious about. And this is obviously not the only corridor that we're, looking at this kind of arrangement for, given the financial situations that we're in and our capacity right now. We have about $1 billion budget, and it's about $600-700 million short annually for us to be able to do anything that we would be able to do to meet the needs of the community and the broader state. And so what we're really able to do is a lot of maintenance. And so maintenance is, does not add capacity. And so the areas that we're looking at, the way we believe, and this is a sort of a policy of CDOT, that we can add capacity system-wide, is to look at sort of managed lane concepts that include tolled express lanes. So C470 is one that we are looking at this for, I-70 in the mountains, and I-70 east through Denver, as well as North I-25. And so those are the corridors right now that we are looking at to see whether or not we might be able to make some of these improvements, the plans that we've had around for a long, long time. And perhaps a P3 is a part of that and how we might construct and finance and operate it, or perhaps it's not. And so those are all things that we're in the process of looking at right now.
Great. Now, let me see. In terms of the I-70 mountain corridor, I've reviewed the proposals at a high level, but is it correct that the proposal for I-70 mountain would be one express lane tolled, but then two general lanes? I haven't seen any indications that there would be all lanes of I-70 mountain tolled. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. And let me be real clear about the proposal that you read. I'm guessing that what you're talking about is the Parsons proposal, which was essentially something that was, I'm not going to call it an unsolicited, but it was pretty much an unsolicited proposal on what they might do for a final solution for the I-70 mountain corridor. Right now, that proposal is, I'm going to sort of say on ice a little bit, while CDOT pursues some other interim short-term solutions, and then we will always continue to look at and be open to the longer-term solutions. And certainly the proposal that came from Parsons for what we call co-development is one of those. So let me explain what you're going to see for sure on I-70 in the shorter term. So we just finished expanding the eastbound twin tunnel. And I think you probably know that. So we just added our third lane in there that basically went from Idaho Springs through to what's called Hidden Valley, which Hidden Valley is sort of right where that Central City Parkway, turnoff is. So we were able to add that third lane, and part of that agreement, again, because a part of our policy in regards to added capacity in those congestion corridors being tolled express lanes. So that lane will eventually become a tolled express lane. The way it's going to work, though, is it's going to be paired with something we just started a study, or a plan, and we're gathering public feedback and comment on this, on a peak period shoulder lane. And what we are going to do is, there's just enough room in that corridor right now to pave out the shoulder on eastbound I-70 from Empire Junction, which is where 40 comes in, from Berthoud Pass and Winter Park.
Yes.
All the way through to that third lane that we just constructed through the Twin Tunnel. So that lane is going to be used only during peak hours, so let's say Sunday afternoon, for instance, and it will be a tolled lane. So it will be a tolled lane. And so again, the general purpose lanes, stay free, just as they always are. And what we think, when you sort of split this, is there will be some people who are willing to pay for the reliability, et cetera, of the tolled express lane, and thereby that frees, some of the congestion off the general purpose lanes, and then also people can continue those general purpose lanes. And so when we are not in the peak hours, we'll simply turn that lane off, and we'll monitor it and enforce it and that kind of thing, because the volume doesn't necessarily dictate the need for that lane during let's say during the weekday up in the mountains.
Right.
So that is for sure happening, and so the process of going through the final planning stages, that kind of thing, and it would be open sometime next, in 2015, mid-2015, summer 2015 or so. So that's sort of what's happening in the mountains.
Great.
Again, general purpose lanes keep going.
If I can just ask one question on that.
Yeah, feel free.
Sure. How is the financing for that project being provided? Is it Colorado public funds?
What we were able to do with that particular one is we were able to fund the Twin Tunnel expansion with CDOT funds. And we are using a program called RAMP, which was an accelerated construction program that we were just able to do, that we're going to be using to pay for the peak period shoulder lanes. So basically, we are trying to eke as much money as we possibly can out of our budget. And one of the ways that we are doing that, so it's not new revenue, but what we have done is we have changed how we budget for our projects. And so we are now using an expenditure-based budgeting program. And what that means is, let's say I had a $100 million project. It used to be in year one, I would save my $20 million, and in year two, I would save my $20 million, in year three, et cetera. And by the time I had saved my $100 million, I would then start my project. So the very conservative nature of the money was fully in the bank before I started construction. we have shifted now that we are going to encumber the funds in the budget a year of expenditure. And so that means if I save $20 million in year one, I will start my project in year one. And so when we did that, this just happened within the last year. When we did that, essentially accelerated about $1 billion to be able to be used to get more projects out in construction sooner. And so we just went through a very extensive process with the public and with our local partners and the like to identify many projects that people had ready and they wanted to build here in the next 5 years to accelerate with that. And so the peak period shoulder lanes is one of the projects that was selected to do.
Excellent. Well, good. That sounds good. And then, so if I-70 Mountain goes under P3 arrangement, I imagine it would be similar to 36 in that the concession agreement would cover the toll lane and most likely maintenance operations on the 2 general lanes. Is that correct?
It may, and we didn't know yet whether or not it would go with the P3 arrangement up on the mountains. So that's not something yet that we are pursuing, and so we don't know yet if that's actually going to happen.
Okay, so it's an option, but unknown as to whether it will proceed in that direction, correct?
Exactly. And at this point, I don't know if it's something that would happen in the short term related to the peak period shoulder lanes.
Okay, great. Let's take a look at the I-70 East Viaduct project. I'd love to get your thoughts around there.
Yeah. And so essentially what that project is, as you know, it's been a long studied environmental impact statement in that particular quarter. We have been doing the study now for 10 years. We are finally coming to the end of that particular study. The recommended preferred alternative is to add 2 lanes in each direction, both of which would be tolled express lanes, and to also take I-70 in a portion that goes, by the Purina plant in that area, the Swansea area neighborhood, and to essentially take it down and under and put a cap across, or a lid, to put a cap across that would be a park or those kinds of things to start sort of drawing that community back together. So that's the solution that has been, discussed and, supported by the city and county of Denver and working with the community and the like, and that's the project itself. It's, as you indicated in some of your stuff, it is a $1 billion project. It's a large part replaces the viaduct, the I-70 viaduct, and this is a fancy word for a bridge that goes up and over in that area right now that is not the most, let's say it's reached the end of its shelf life. It should be retired. So, so that bridge is ready to be retired. We've been patching it and keeping it whole for some time now. So that's the project. Again, two new additional capacity lanes, both of which would be tolled express lanes. We are in the process of completing what's called a traffic and revenue study, and I saw that you had indicated Macquarie in some of your stuff. Macquarie is the firm that CDOT put on retainer to do this traffic and revenue study to show us and talk to us about what the anticipated revenues, et cetera, would be, and the traffic flows, the volumes, and what does it mean to have tolled express lanes in that area. And then we will take that information as its final and determine whether or not we could pursue a public-private partnership with that information. And then they don't always take that for gold. They then do their own stuff to say yes or no. They believe that it's worth it and worth their while to invest in a project like that. So again, same deal sort of as US 36, where the new capacity would be a tolled express lane, and then it would continue to maintain the general purpose lanes as they have always been.
Great. So it doesn't sound like there's any proposal to make all lanes tolled, is there?
No. Oh gosh, no. Okay. No. And let me just make a real quick comment about the way the legislation reads about some of that. Mm-hmm. There is a very slim thing that you could do to convert a general purpose lane, but it is, I guess I would say 100% nearly impossible to probably ever do that. Number one, politically, I don't think anyone wants to touch that with a 10-foot pole. But number two, because you have got, you must have 100% concurrence of the surrounding neighborhoods or communities or jurisdictions to support the conversion of general purpose lanes into managed or tolled express lane. So it is not just something that the HBTD or CDOT or whomever could say, let's switch it all to tolled express lanes. That is not how the process works. It's not what the law says. The law requires that there must be 100% compliance by the surrounding communities and jurisdictions with with a decision like that.
Now, just a question on that. Has that community support been obtained on the conversion of the I-70 lane?
There is no conversion happening on an I-70 lane.
Oh,
which lane are you referring to?
My understanding, I think what I heard earlier in this conversation is the third lane that's already open is scheduled to potentially be converted into a toll lane.
On the Twin Tunnel lane?
Yes.
No, there's signage right now. That's a brand new lane, and so that lane has been and always has been planned as a tolled express lane. And so there's signage. If you drive the corridor right now, you may not even see it if you drive by it. There's signs saying this will be a tolled express lane by 2015. There were triggers in when it was being built when it turns into that tolled express lane. And so it's not a conversion of the lane. It was how it was planned to be built and open house.
Okay, that's helpful to know. So, so that's lane is not being considered a conversion because it was always purposed to be a toll lane.
Right, and it is new capacity that was added.
Great.
A conversion would be for something that was already existing that you would turn into then a different use.
Okay, that's helpful. Good. That's good information on that process. Some of the concerns that have arisen just in terms of public process and whether the public interest is being served. Are you familiar with some of the meetings in New Orleans that at the time state lawmaker Glenn Vaught was holding with Macquarie, Sintra behind closed doors? Yeah, so in August 2011, are you familiar with the American Legislative Exchange Council?
Not entirely, no. I admit I saw them referenced your stuff, but I wasn't very familiar with that group, so no, I don't know.
Yeah, just in a nutshell, they are an organization that brings together corporate lobbyists from oil and gas and toll road development firms, brings them together with state lawmakers to draft legislation, and then that legislation is brought back by the lawmakers and introduced in state houses as their own. And a large area of our concern is that Glenn Vaught, who was acting as the House Chair of Transportation, was also a member of ALEC for 6 years, and in 2011-2012, for a 2-year period, he was the chair of the powerful Commerce, Insurance, and Economic Development Task Force, and the mission of that task force is to accelerate the privatization of state assets for the benefit of their member corporations. And so, yeah, we have a task force meeting agenda that places Glenn Vaught chairing behind door meetings with actually, this may be a familiar name, both Sintra and then Jeff Segal of Macquarie Capital, who's the head of government relations and external affairs. And I believe it's the same Jeff Segal that was in those private New Orleans meeting that is now advising the state of Colorado on the finance deal. And so because of the kind of the long history of these firms being being heavily involved in this lobbying organization and then meeting with our state lawmakers behind closed doors, there's a considerable question of whether these new arrangements are serving the public interest or designed to serve the membership of ALEC.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, no, and I certainly understand, you could have those concerns. And so, I obviously believe, I think, given the process that created the HPTE and the FASTER legislation. It was created in 2009 as part of the FASTER legislation, and some of the oversight that's required from a legislature perspective and the reporting and the like would hopefully provide a window into what's going on and sort of that kind of openness. But certainly, any questions that you all have, and certainly happy to answer if there are questions that you have that I can pass along and, get to our executive director and the like. Happy to do so.
Yeah, actually, interestingly enough, one of the pieces of ALEC model legislation where toll firms and state lawmakers were voting side by side is a P3 Authority Act that is identical to Colorado's HPTE organization. But in terms of timing, so that vote came in 2011, where ALEC passed that as draft model legislation. But of course, the FASTER Act was 2009. So what we think was going on was that corporate lobbyists were working to help develop the FASTER legislation, and then that was templated in 2011 so that other states can move ahead with the process. And just one note on Jeff Siegel of Macquarie Capital. So his background before he joined that firm, from 2000 to 2007, he was a staff member of the Reason Foundation, which is funded by the Koch brothers. And essentially that's a pretty hard right-wing organization with the stated mission of privatizing state assets, and not necessarily in the public interest. So I just wanted to share with you as to kind of the source of our concerns.
Sure. No, I understand. And I think, that one of the things that I listen to you say, and obviously it's an interesting discussion as a whole, but the concept of privatizing assets is really an interesting one, and interestingly, the take that we're doing here doesn't necessarily privatize the assets themselves, and so I think there's a big difference in some of that, but certainly I can see where people could quibble about that piece of it, but yeah, we're essentially leveraging the private investment to accelerate construction that would be sorely needed or really frankly not possible otherwise. And then again, in return, obviously, there's the collection of the revenue that can be generated from, the tolled express lanes and the like, but then the asset is always ours in the States, and that's a really important piece, I think, of this, that may be a bit different than how some of the other states have handled it in the past, and certainly one of the things that we wanted to make very sure that we were protective of.
Yeah, although I guess in terms of the 50-year contracts, if depending on the degree of control of the asset for 50 years, it would really, kind of the devil would be in the details of the concession agreement.
Yeah, certainly, I understand that. Yeah, no, we believe that we've maintained pretty significant amount of control in the level of the maintenance and the level of the expectations and the use and how those lanes meet the needs of the citizens. But certainly as that's finalized and that kind of thing, that level of review and that level of discussion is certainly one that we're happy to have as well.
Yeah, and just to let you know too, in terms of the P4 preferred funding arrangement, what we are floating in terms of, we certainly agree that CDOT has many budget considerations and many priorities. As an avid skier myself, I've sat in ski traffic.
I know, way too many hours, haven't we?
Yeah, just a question on that. What is the history of the metering process coming back into the tunnel? That seemed like it was a new item this year.
Yeah, actually it was there last year as well, and you may not have realized it. And actually what it is, it's a safety metering. And as we get more and more traffic, and as it continues to back up, depending on where the backups were coming from, we have turned on a metering system that holds the traffic on, the westbound side of the tunnel, or the west side of the tunnel. and then releases that traffic, as you experience, as you've probably gone through it, so that we can have continuous flow of traffic going through the tunnel, because we cannot afford to have, from a safety perspective, traffic stopped and stacked in the tunnel, and especially if something happens. So that's what the metering is about. It's a safety piece of it, and a byproduct of that is it also has the same effect a little bit that we tried to accomplish when we had the police cars out there last winter too, where we were trying to sort of keep cars at an average speed. That's what you often find up is if there's a little gap, a car will try to speed up, enough of that gap, and then it breaks the brakes, and that sort of ebb and flow actually causes the traffic to go much, much longer. And the more steady and consistent you are with your speed, it actually helps keep things moving more steadily. Well, the pilot program worked actually, but people just were irritated with it, so we're not doing it this fall or this winter. But interestingly, that the metering of the tunnel is first and foremost and will always be a safety thing. That we can't have cars stacked in the tunnel, but it also has a little bit of effect of accomplishing some of the things that the police cars were able to do last winter.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems like, from a casual observation, that the 2-hour waits heading up to the tunnel were worsened by the metering, and then once one was past the meters, that traffic was very much free-flowing and wide open.
Yeah, and we only turn it off, and the volumes are such that we know that the stacks will sort of end up in the tunnel, and so it seems like that. I certainly get that. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's good traffic engineering and trying to figure out the safety of the tunnel and putting the metering into effect with all of that. But no matter what, that drive is tough for anyone, when you encounter all of these little different things. And so, yeah, but it's working, keeps our tunnel safe, which is the important thing. And it's always interesting, and we always hope, and in fact, we just launched a campaign this week, so we're talking about it, about an education campaign trying to encourage people to think differently about when they travel, like the times literally they travel on that corridor during the weekends, and the relationship that we have with the nonprofit out there to work with resorts and others, maybe their deals and things that we can do to encourage people to think differently about take an early bird special and leave early, or hold on and just a little bit more time and sort of spreading that peak out. And the more we can capable of doing that, the less we actually have to turn on the tunnel metering. So.
Right. Now, in terms of kind of fostering public discussion of funding options, so we're in full agreement that expansion projects are needed, and I think we may be able to offer a solution that really supports the state and supports the public interest. In terms of the P4 concept, what we're looking at advocating is, you're probably familiar with Tabor, of course, as it's driven a lot of the P3 initiative with the federal highway loans. Our proposed solution is, we call it the Tabor Road Freedom Amendment, where rather than going to toll lanes, which really, kind of transfer the tax burden from to the middle class, or it kind of makes an inequitable system where only the rich can get out to the ski hills quickly while everybody else has to poke along in the general lanes. Our solution, the